The psalmist says, "Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth." On behalf of Myra, all of her family, all of Maggie's family, thank you for being present with us today. Take a look around you at all the t-shirts that adorn the sanctuary, all the places where Maggie prayed with her feet. So thank you, comrades who walked with her as she did justice and loved kindness and walked humbly with our God. Thank you for being her comrade in her work and witness. Thank you for being a support to this family as Maggie heroically battled this insidious disease. Thank you so much for being with them when Maggie transitioned on and offering comfort and solace to Myra and to all of Maggie's family. And thank you for the ways that you will continue to walk with them in the days ahead. When we gather in these spaces, we are always grieving all of our losses, and so may the comfort of God be not only with you today, but as you think of all those whom we've lost and all those whom we miss. Thank you to those of you who have gotten up early on the West Coast, all of Maggie's dear friends at the West Hollywood United Church of Christ. Thank you also for being with us in the live stream. Maggie was a treasure there for decades as well as being a treasure here, and so we're glad to have you in spirit with us via the live stream. And I'm exceedingly grateful to have my colleague, the Reverend Dan Smith, the retired pastor of the West Hollywood United Church of Christ, to lead service today. It's good that you are with us and that you've come out to be with Myra and her family in this time. A couple of housekeeping things, if you will indulge me. If you need a restroom and you're on this side of the sanctuary, you can go out by that back door and make a right, and there's a bathroom that way. If you're on that side of the sanctuary, you can go out by the back, make a left, and there's a bathroom there. Or you can go through these doors right here, and there's a couple of bathrooms here as well as upstairs. Following the service, the family's just going to gather and stand right here to greet any of you who want to do that, but you're free to move around and take a look at the table with all the pictures, the badges from all the walks, as well as the t-shirts. There will be refreshments. There's a chapel immediately behind me through these two doors on the side. There's refreshments. There's also a book to sign so that Myra and the others and her family and Maggie's family can see that you were here and be reminded of your presence. There will be an opportunity in the service for any one of you to offer a brief reflection in memory of Maggie. I would invite you, if you feel so moved by the Spirit, to just join me down here. I will hold a handheld mic so that people can hear all the way on the West Coast as well as in this space. I think that is everything. Again, it is good to be here. We were just here 4 years and a few days ago to celebrate Myra and Maggie's wedding, a day of such joy. And now this is a day with gratitude and joy, but also deep sorrow. But we as people of faith have known what it means to live in plenty and in want, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health. We live with the conviction that nothing separates us from the love of God. And so God meets us in this space wherever we are and however we feel. Let us worship God. Welcome. I would invite you now to join with me in the sentences of Scripture. We will read them responsively. It is in your bulletin. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. If anyone believes in me, even though she die, she will live, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die." To those who are heavy burdened, Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are overburdened, and I will give you rest." The psalmist proclaims, "Our help is in the name of our God, the maker of heaven and earth." God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in times of trouble and pain. Trusting in God's love and knowing of God's presence with us, let us give thanks to God for the life of Margaret Rose Ritchey. Through our thoughts, words, and prayers, let us worship God.
For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
One of the things that Maggie and I and many others were committed to was finding new ways to image God in our lives, of peace and of loving, and how do we get beyond this God and this kind of grandfathery, angry God in the sky. And one of the ways that we did this was to start developing theology of what does it mean to be a friend. It's an image that Jesus uses often in the Bible, and a wonderful contemporary composer came up with this setting of the 23rd Psalm, in which he envisions God not only as shepherd, but as our friend. So join me. You'll sing the refrain when I raise my hands, and we will join in singing the 23rd Psalm. Shepherd, you are my friend. I want to follow you always, just to follow my friend. With me. God, you are my shepherd, you are my friend. I want to follow you always, just to follow my friend. Because God is my shepherd, I have everything I need. God lets me rest in the meadows and leads me to the quiet stream. God restores my soul and God leads me in the paths that are right. God, you are my shepherd, you are my friend. I want to follow you always, just to follow my friend. And when the road leads to darkness, I shall walk there unafraid. Even when death is close, I have courage, for your help is there. You are close beside me with comfort. You are guiding my way. God, you are my shepherd. You are my friend. I want to follow you always, just to follow my friend. In love you make me a banquet for my enemies to see. You make me welcome, pouring down honor from your loving hands. And this joy fills me with gladness. It is too much to bear. God, you are my shepherd, you are my friend. I want to follow you always, just to follow my friend. Your goodness always is with me, and your mercy I know. Your loving kindness strengthens me always as I go through life. I shall dwell in your presence forever, giving praise to your name. God, you are my shepherd, you are my friend. I want to follow you always, just to follow my friend. And now reading from the Gospel of John, the 11th chapter, the story of the raising of Lazarus. Now, when Jesus came to the tomb, he found that Lazarus had already been buried in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the women of faith had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning the death of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out and met him. And Mary, she sat in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died. And even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." And Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha said to Jesus, I know that my brother will rise on the resurrection of the last day." But Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection, and I am the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." "Do you believe this?" Jesus asked Martha. Martha said, "Yes, I believe that you are the Christ, the anointed one of God." When Martha had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying to her quietly, "The teacher is here and wants to talk with you." And when Mary heard it, she quickly rose and went to Jesus. When Jesus saw her weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled and said, "Where have you buried Lazarus?" They said to Jesus, "Come and see." Jesus stood outside the tomb and wept. Those watching each other said, "Wow, see how much Jesus loved Lazarus." Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb in which Lazarus was buried. He had the stone taken away, and he cried in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And Lazarus came out. But his hands and feet were all bound in burial rags, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to the community, "Unbind him and let him go free." Amen.
A reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 1 to 7. Jesus said, "Set your troubled hearts at rest. Trust in God always. Trust also in me. There are many dwelling places in our God's house. If it were not so, I should have told you. For I'm going there on purpose to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, so that where I am, you may be also. And my way there is known to you." But Thomas, one of Jesus' disciples, said, "We do not know where you're going, so how can we know the way?" Jesus replied, "I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to our God except by me. If you know me, you will know God also. From now on, you do know God, and you have seen God."
Our final reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account.
Maggie, Ritchey, and I came to West Hollywood Church about the same time. It was the fall of 1984, and West Hollywood Church had just called their first gay pastor, which was quite controversial in the Presbyterian Church. So she came there to check me out, and I passed all the lists she had, though the number one concern she had was that if I was a guy, I was going to be sexist. And I proved to her in my candidating sermon that was entitled God is as the Mother Eagle, that I was at least on the right track with her, and she immediately embraced me, and we became dear friends. About 2 or 3 weeks after I landed at West Hollywood Church, after I actually was installed and began my pastorate, I had members starting to come and call me, and they'd say, my offering checks have not cleared for the last 3 months. Do you have any idea what's going on? I said, that's funny, because the treasurer asked me to hold my paycheck till they had some money in the accounts. And I said, maybe we better look into this. And I went and I talked over to the treasurer's house, and he said, look, I don't want this job. I hate this job. And he said, here are the damn checks. And there's a stack of checks this thick sitting on his desk. Now, the accounting side of me just freaked out. But I said, I know who can fix this mess. And so I said, Maggie, Would you be interested in being the church treasurer? It's really simple. We have no money, and you just write checks. Well, about 3 months later, being in the center of West Hollywood, California, the heart of the gay community, we were overwhelmed with people starting to get sick with AIDS. We had needs beyond our wildest imagination. We had to create all kinds of special funds, try to find ways to fund it. We had a spiritual support group for people with AIDS. We had an AIDS benevolence fund because in those days, as soon as you were diagnosed with AIDS, your employer fired you, you lost your health care, many times you lost your apartment if you were living there, and it was just horrible. And so we needed money, and we needed to get this thing fixed, and we became so overwhelmed as only one of 2 churches in all of Los Angeles that would even welcome people with AIDS into our worshiping community. The number of persons with AIDS and the community's fear was just overwhelming. And I went to the Presbyterian and I said, I got to have help. One person can't do this. And they said, well, if you can get X amount of money, we will match it and go on. So I went back to the church session at the governing board and Maggie, and I said, you think we can possibly do this? And everybody said, we have no choice. And during that whole time, we were in massive fundraising modes, and people were just unbelievably generous. But the only reason those ministries ever were as effective as they were is that Maggie kept them straight. And I talked with her one time. She was such a good accountant. And I said, Maggie, you need to go back to school, get an MBA, make a living on this. And she says, oh, no. She said, I only have 2 or 3 clients that I really make money off of. The rest of my work is all work that I believe in. And that's so true. As we were going through some of her things and finding all of the financial statements for all these wonderful justice organizations, women's health cooperatives before we had decent health care for women, churches, secular institutions, AIDS groups, was all because that's who she believed in. She was also, and I hate to even call her a member of the church because she was just part of a core leadership team, ministry team that we had at West Hollywood Church. And she was very, very much involved with our Lazarus Project, which is why I read that reading from Lazarus. That reading was the patron saint of our Lazarus Project. The Lazarus Project went out to all the Presbyterian and then all the area churches and synagogues that would welcome us in Los Angeles to share our story of what it means to be gay and Christian. And this is in the early 1980s, mind you, many people had never even met a gay or lesbian Christian. They had no idea what we were talking about, and most of the ideas they had were just plain wrong and stereotypically wrong. And so we would go out and share our faith stories and meet with people and talk with people and try to help people grow and understand what it was to be just a gay or lesbian person. Today, we probably have that same need in the transgender community. So there's more misinformation out there about transgender people than there's accurate information at this point in time. And behind this was Maggie's desire in all she did for an inclusive church and an inclusive, peaceful world. Now, in the early days of our faith sharing and our being gay and lesbian and our working at General Assembly in the Presbyterian Church, it was spiritually abusive and violent. This was not easy stuff. This was just horrible, horrible stuff that was said about us and that we had to correct. And Maggie would go out on those teams and faith sharing teams and just astound people. She'd talk about her life as a Girl Scout, about her time at family camp, about growing up in Pittsburgh, about everything that was as normal as you can imagine and as Presbyterian as you could imagine. And she changed so many hearts and minds working towards that glorious, inclusive church. Towards the end of the 1990s, of course, you know, Maggie's mom was getting more and more sick, and she was coming back here more often to help her mom when she had surgeries and so on. And when she did that, we said, what are we going to do about the treasurer job? And she said, well, just FedEx it to me once a week, and I'll FedEx you a pack back. And it worked. We didn't have Zoom then. We had the first long-distance treasurer relationship, and every time the audit committee met, and you had to try to explain, well, our church treasurer is in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, and our accounts are in Los Angeles, but it works. And they'd say, there is not a thing wrong with these financial statements. This is a brilliant idea you guys have. And then came the horrible, for us, decision-making time when she had to decide, was she going to move back here to take care of her mom and move back to Pittsburgh as her home, or was she going to stay in LA? And she loved LA, but she loved her mom and this community more. So she came back. And of course, the two things that were high on her list were she had to try to find a church. So she had a list of ones she wasn't even going to bother with in this area. And then she had a short list of ones she was going to try. So she kind of started coming here pretty regularly. And she said, you know, this is almost perfect except for the language thing, and it just drives me crazy. And I said, well, yeah, I know that's going to be hard. But I said, if you get too crazy, just call me up, and we'll talk through it. I should have never offered that. There is a 3-hour time difference, you know. But I was delighted when she actually joined. And I kept pushing her, say, Maggie, you need to join Sixth. This needs to be your home. This is where you're going to be. And she said, well, can I still be the treasurer in West Hollywood? I said, yeah. She said, well, that's where my heart and my values are. I said, yeah. So the second thing she needed out here was music. And when she found the Renaissance City Choirs, it was like everything went together. And she was so, so at peace. She had found a new home, a new community, new causes, new people. And she was really, really happy here. With one exception, she was always hoping to find a life partner. And then Myra came into her life, and the pieces kept coming together in ways that the geographical distance said this probably isn't going to work, but it did. And I remember just about 4 years ago, sitting in this sanctuary as she walked down this aisle and Myra walked down this aisle. I've never seen her so happy in my life. She was just exuberant. One, because everybody was here. Two, was because she was actually getting married to the one she so loves. And three, because it was Sixth Church. And she and I had so many conversations about how proud she was, Vincent, the session, the members of this church, for having a same-gender wedding. And was this the first same-gender wedding here? No? Nope. Well, she just loved the fact that the doors were fully open to her. And I said, Maggie, I said, you're reaping the benefits of all of our labors. And she never lost that glow from the day of her marriage on. Now, some of you know in 1986, Maggie participated in something called the Great Peace March. We found a black and white picture of it. You can see these many, many, many people who are lined up. It was a group of people who were committed to peace for global nuclear disarmament. And they literally walked from the shore of Southern California, the ocean, to the Atlantic Ocean, and then back here to Washington, D.C. took over a year, and there were many, many stumbles and many, many misses in this thing. At first, it was kind of a very disorganized thing, and they realized it had to have a lot of people to be able to do this. And so she came, and Maggie stepped up into leadership and helped them get their finances in order. They went through a number of directors, and they literally marched across the country. Now, there's sometimes when I look at my Fitbit or my iPhone to see if I have how many steps I've made this day. I can't imagine walking from one coast to another coast in the name of peace or in the name of anything else. That just would not be possible in my mindset, and yet she did it. And one of the things they did at each village, each stop they stayed, was they stayed in people's homes. This wasn't just about the goal of marching. This was about going and talking with people and changing hearts and minds. And the other day I was just thinking how relevant today is the message that she had then. And she used to bring with her, and she did this at church on Peacemaking Sundays many times for us. She had a big galvanized aluminum wash tub. It was about this big and maybe 8 or 10 inches high. And then she had some BBs. And she was saying, I want you to understand where we are in the nuclear age in the world. Now, this is, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And she said she'd drop one BB in this bucket, and you'd hear it go. And then she'd say, now listen. She'd pour the rest of the BBs into the bucket. It was deafening, and it went on forever and ever and seemingly ever. And she said that represents the amount of nuclear destructive power the nuclear nations of the world currently have. We cannot let happen again what happened the first time we used nuclear weapons. And she spent her lifetime working on peace and justice and carrying out that education in her own way. As she was dying, Maggie, or Myra, and a couple friends let us, through technology, phone in to talk with her. And I said, Maggie, you're finally going towards the culmination of the great peace march that you've worked so hard for. For now, you're going to be soon in a place where everyone is at peace with each other, where everyone is loved with the divine love that we call God, or that we call enlightenment, or that we call liberation. And as you go into that, just enjoy the light and be sure to connect with all of the saints who have gone on before us in this wonderful journey. And she died a beautiful death with many of you coming and singing, and just transitioned into this great peace that she gave her entire life to work towards. But she leaves us with the same message of those BBs. We must never again do what we did in World War II, because the stakes right now are beyond belief. And I so thought of her the other night when they were talking about Russia and Putin and Ukraine and whether we're going to get into yet another nuclear war. And you just think, can't be. We need more Maggies out there, because there still is work to do. She's done her work. She's now in the peace and able to experience the view of life that God has, of love and peace and justice. So we'll take a little bit of that and then go out and work. Amen.
We want to offer a moment, if you so desire, to offer a brief reflection and memory or gratitude for Maggie and her life. And you can just come stand here in front with me, and I'll hold the mic while you speak.
Hi, my name is Jet Downey, and I was Maggie's choir buddy in the Renaissance City Choir, among other things. She was so important to me. This community is so important to me.
Take your time.
Thank you. It might take a while. The thing that I want to talk about to you is the moment when Maggie died. It's been such a suffering privilege to be a part of the LGBT community in Pittsburgh. You have saved my life. I care about you so much, and I feel that from you, and I did from Maggie. And I want to tell you that as Maggie was dying, Myra was right there at her bedside and looked into her eyes for hours. I didn't take a picture of it because I felt it was a very private moment, and I didn't want to take out a phone and take a picture, but I will never forget, and I want to describe to you the level of beauty and devotion that Myra had toward Maggie, and I know that Maggie had toward Myra. And to see them in that moment as she was dying, the connection, the comfort, Myra would not look away. And I will remember that about Maggie and Myra for the rest of my life.
When the Peace March came through Pittsburgh, I and others joined in. It was something that Maggie and I had in common, that we shared with each other, and was so important. And it's just been also, Myra, it has been a blessing watching you as you take care of her.
I first met both Myra and Maggie when we were working together on the religion and spirituality subgroup of Voices for a New Tomorrow that was held by PERSAD after they came out with Purple Report. We worked for about 2 years on how to include GLBT people in Pittsburgh in following whatever faith, whatever group in Pittsburgh was there. We then started working, Maggie and I started working on the Pittsburgh Presbytery's task force on ministry with sexual minorities. And our major focus there was changing the Book of Order so that we could install and ordain GLBT people as elders, as deacons, and as pastors. And so I had the privilege of working with Maggie all of those years on that. And then she joined the Renaissance Choir, and we sang together side by side through many, many concerts. So I feel like I was in the later part of Maggie's life, but a very important part for all of us.
Hi, my name is Lydia McShane, and I was also a choir buddy of Maggie's at the Renaissance City Choir, and then became friends with Myra too through the East End Song Studio. And I just want to talk about Maggie's playfulness because, and a little bit naughtiness. Like in choir, for warm-ups with Jeffrey Johnson, we had to be so, he wanted us straightforward, he wanted everything, like everyone focused and kind of getting into the music. And Maggie, like standing next to us, would just turn around with this big smile and kind of, like she was so silly, or she'd turn around and like she never, she was just always so silly and had this giant smile, or even during some songs she would look over and have this like giant smile, and she was just so fun and such a lovely person. And I'm really glad I got to spend time with both Maggie and Myra over this past year. It's been really a blessing and just something that's been so important to me. With Maggie coming out to see how I was gardening, making sure I was doing the right thing. But yeah, I love Maggie, and I love you, Myra.
Hi, my name's Lisa Allen. I'm a member for RCC. I wasn't planning on coming up here. I was in a memorial for my brother just yesterday, and I didn't get up to say anything. But I feel like I really want to say something about Maggie. And our RCC family is just wonderful, and she was a wonderful part of it. There was one road trip that the choir took. I can't even remember where we went to, but I lived in Bethel Park also for a while. And Maggie drove back with me, and it was probably an hour and a half or 2 hours. And all the stories that she told me about her life growing up and her activism was very inspiring to me. And I also enjoyed seeing her in choir every Tuesday. And I was just saying to myself, Marlo, she was born in 1950, and my brother, who passed away, was born a year ahead of her. And I was thinking about how my brother was a brother, and how I wish I had 4 brothers. How I wish I could have had a sister like Maggie to look up to like that. And I'm really going to miss her. I love you, Myra. Thank you for joining the choir.
I'm Leslie. I'm from this congregation. I got to know Maggie at one of the church women's retreats we had many years ago. We had an assignment to make a friendship bracelet, and we were paired up just randomly, and we were supposed to make one and make it for the other person. And Maggie was really uncomfortable with doing that, but she persevered. It wasn't one of the skills, that kind of handwork that she had done before, although I'd never done it before either. And it gave us really time to talk to each other. And I learned a lot about her life in California and how she came to Pittsburgh, and it kind of set the basis for a really long and really nice friendship. We sang together in the alto section of the choir for years, and I was always impressed that she knew all the words to some of those old hymns.
My name is Shayla. I didn't know Maggie very long, but I met her at Renaissance City Choir. She was always very kind and patient to a brand new, very awkward person. But the story I wanted to share, I joined in 2019, and the choir got to sing backup for Hugh Jackman when he came to town. We were all nervous because they divested us of our music, and we had to sing everything with, memorized. And we had blocking besides, which I think Maggie wasn't very used to. So we were all standing on stage for the first song, and Hugh Jackman comes down in the center, right next to Maggie, put his arm around her, sang to her, hugged her at the end of the song. We all got off the stage, and she was laughing, and she said, "I don't even know who he is." I thought it was so funny and priceless to me for a memory of Maggie. Thank you.
Well, having shared all these memories, and as we all reflect on his life, we have a prayer that we're going to offer together. It's written by Susan Kramer, who is one of our feminist lesbian theologians in the church, and it's a prayer of celebration and creativity. So if you're able, please stand as we join in giving thanks to God for the gift of Maggie's life through this prayer. We believe in a sacred power within and around us, a divine spirit that we call by many names and experience in many ways. That spirit that empowers and heals, that calls us forth into the fullness of life. We believe in creativity, making and transforming beauty out of light and color, drama and performance, music, art, and dance. We experience the world as it is, and we see what it can become. A passionate love within and around us that laughs and cries, challenges and comforts, a healing love that perseveres. We know who we are, painful as that can be at times, yet we continue to call each other to become more of who we are. We remember and we commemorate. We play and dance and sing and love well. We affirm our many shapes and sizes, colors and traditions, emotions, thoughts, differences, and similarities. Life that wells up within and flows out of us like a streaming fountain. And that God has called each and every one of us to be creative, to dream dreams, to believe in love, to reach our potential, to celebrate life, and to enjoy diversity. As we gather here today, we remember each of these gifts that was central to the way that Maggie lived her life and the values she believed in. We thank God that Maggie was able to share these gifts with us. Amen.
And if you will join me, please, in the responsive prayer of remembrance. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember Maggie. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember her. In the blueness of the sky and the warmth of summer, we remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for Maggie is now a part of us as we remember her.
Celtic tradition, which is closely related to our Presbyterian heritage, they have a belief that what separates us from God and from each other is not nearly as wide as we think. And they talk about there being thin places in the world and in our life journey in which we encounter the living presence of God, and we actually can cross over into the realm of those who have gone before us and live in God's love. So today, we now add Maggie to that great chorus of saints who's crossed over, but is as close in those tender places where we can feel her and when we need her strong presence to motivate us and her hugs to empower us. So we trust and give her over to God. Amen.